All right, welcome to How to Find a Summer Job or Internship, featuring the distinguished, the illustrious Santa Clara University Board of Regents. This is our second year in a row hosting this panel discussion, kind of a rotating cast of regents, but the topic is the same. As we're looking ahead to summer, we have 5 to 6 weeks to go before we break for summer. A lot of students are curious about, what the strategy should be in these final weeks to secure a job or internship, or alternatives to finding a job or internship. Are there other good and productive ways to spend one's summer? And so I'm going to introduce one of the regents who's going to share a little bit about the board, a little bit about the activities of the board and the ways in which the board supports students in seen and unseen ways. So I would like to introduce my dear friend, Jacques Bolivar, who is also the president at Faro Financial Group, been a member of the board for several years now. And Jacques, would you like to just share a little bit about the board, the internship committee, and some of the activities you're involved in?
Absolutely. Welcome, everybody. I can only see a few faces on my screen. It's exciting to know I can't see all the faces since that means we have a lot of attendees. I'm from the class of 94. I had a finance major, and I joined the Regents a couple years ago. And the Regents consider us ambassadors for the students. And most of us are alum. All of us have some passion and affinity for Santa Clara, and we're doing a lot of work to bridge the president's agenda and strategic plan to direct student life and experience being better. In particular, on the internship committee, we're trying to see that there's more paid internship experiences for students. And most recently, our committee developed a grant fund. We had our first go round in January. We had 26 applicants, and the applications can come from students and faculty, and it's to benefit out of classroom experiences. And we're targeting career validation. We're targeting paid internships because we know most students have a funding gap of maybe 25% of tuition, $15,000. And so a paid internship can make that difference. And even if you don't have a financial need, an internship can help you validate your career path. And so this time around with this grant, we've had 5 programs ranging from conference attendance to paid internships, or something that gives you smart skills that affects the
Share
overall student body.
the meeting document.
Okay, I'm sorry, I heard someone. And the point is, we wanted to share this because next year when we have applications, you might have some great ideas to explore RELI, Region Experiential Learning Initiative, and so you should be aware of this. And beyond that, I don't want to say much else other than we're ambassadors. We're grateful to be here. I see a few other regents and internship committee members, so I'll allow them to build on what we've done and what we do. And I look forward to engaging and answering your questions tonight. So thanks for the opportunity, Dylan.
Yeah, thank you very much. And one of the things that I thought was both clever and kind of symbolic was the name you gave the fund that you started, the Regents Experiential Learning Initiative, calling it RELI, because students can rely on the Board of Regents. They can rely on the trustees. They can rely on the fellows. They can rely on the alumni board. They can rely on the alumni network. That's what makes Santa Clara University such a special place. And you all coming together today to give some of your time, your wisdom, I think is a manifestation of that RELI kind of spirit and ethos. So thank you very much, Jacques. Yeah, let me give some brief introductions. I'll start with myself. My name is Dylan Houle. I am your executive director of the Santa Clara University Career Center. I'm excited to be joined today by Jacques, who you just met. Also, Brian Snyder, who is CEO at Ability Path. Athena Pearl, who is program manager at Intrinsic Environment, Health, and Safety. Steve Robertson, who is CFO at HDMI Licensing Administrator. Neil Datar, who is Corporate Law Associate at Kirkland and Ellis. And I'm giving the briefest of introductions because my very first question to each of you is to introduce yourself. And while you're all introducing yourself, I want to invite all of the students in attendance, please put into the chat your name, your major, your class year. If you have an internship, where are you interning? Or if you have a job, where are you going to be working? Or if you're still looking for work, that will help the panel and myself kind of get a sense of who's in the room. And so let me start with Athena, and then we'll go to Neil, and then we'll go to Steve, and then we'll go to Brian. So Athena, tell us a little bit about, who you are, your career journey that's brought you to where you are today, and just a little bit about your involvement on the board.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dylan, for coordinating this. Hello, everyone. I'm Athena Hurl. I graduated from SCU in 2018 with a double major in public health and political science, and I minored in bio. After I graduated, I went to Vietnam as a Fulbright English teaching assistant, and then I returned in the fall of 2019 to complete my Master of Public Health degree in Global Health and Environment at University of California, Berkeley. I'm currently a program manager, as Dylan mentioned, at Intrinsic Environment, Health, and Safety. So a lot of my experience is in health and safety in research and development, laboratory, healthcare. And so with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Neil.
Thanks, Athena. Hi, everyone. My name is Neil Datar. I am a class of 2017 Bronco. At Santa Clara, I was a political science and history major, and I was involved with student government, and really loved my time at Santa Clara. Feel like it set me up really well for what I did next. So next I went to law school at Duke, and graduated in 2020. After that, I started at Kirkland and Ellis, the law firm that I'm at, and I do corporate law. And mostly work on mergers and acquisitions and private equity deals. And I try to stay involved with Santa Clara, including through the Board of Regents, and working with Jacques and team on the Regent Experiential Learning Initiative. Happy to talk one-on-one with any of you if your career path might align with some of the things that I've done, and to provide any advice, and happy to be here with you all today.
Thank you, Neil. Steve.
Hey everyone, hopefully you can hear me okay. My name is Steve Robertson. I graduated in the class of 90 as an accounting major. I had the opportunity to have a couple of summer internships as well as some part-time work while I was at Santa Clara that also was able to supplement my tuition needs as well as give me decent experience to help me in my career journey. When I graduated from Santa Clara in 90, I went to Ernst & Young, one of the big accounting firms, to focus on getting my CPA, and spent the first half of my career doing mostly corporate accounting related activities. And then the last half of my career, I've transitioned more to financial analysis and executive management, and have for the last almost 5 years been the CFO for the licensing organization for all things HDMI related. So any of you have HDMI ports and cords to connecting from your laptop to a TV or something, that is my company. So I'm hoping that
You locked up there.
Steve is joining us from from PayPal Park where there's a lot, there's a game tonight, so there's a lot of internet activity over there. So Steve, we lost you a little bit right when you were describing the ins and outs of HDMI ports.
Sorry about that. All I said is, my company, just think about the HDMI cord, and we're the underlying technology for that. So, and then I was handing the baton off to Brian. Hopefully you heard everything before that.
We did. Yes. Thank you, Steve. Brian?
You're muted, Brian.
Unmute. Brian Nider, a history major, undergraduate at Santa Clara, went back and got my MBA, then went into public accounting. Also, like Steve, I had an internship, which led to a job with Deloitte. Then went into, left that and went to Electronic Arts pre-IPO, was in corporate finance, worked on the IPO, played a bunch of different roles at EA for over about 26 years. Everything from corporate finance, investor relations, treasury, kind of all that, and then M&A and strategy. And last was COO for all of EA's global game development for multiple years. Then I was on the board of a nonprofit, and then joined the board as CEO for kind of a second chapter, part of that Jesuit education of being part of the community and giving back. And I've been at Ability Path now for 8 years. We serve children and adults with the developmental disabilities, and Ability Path has been around since 1920, so over 100 years serving the community. I will tell you, we still do a lot of tech, investing in the back end, a lot of AI, a lot of other systems. Can you continue to tap into a lot of tech friends to bring that kind of skill set to the nonprofit space? I'm board chair for a private company and on 2 boards for tech startups, and then on 3 different nonprofit boards. The Jesuit arm is long, and keeping me busy, engaged in the community. Have been president of the Alumni Association before joining the Board of Regents, the Business School Board, and then for the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So clearly Santa Clara is near and dear to my heart. My wife is a Bronquette, and our oldest daughter also went to Santa Clara. So, by the way, I will tell all the students here, competing with a lot of schools, great names and everything, Santa Clara always stacks up. The students are incredible. You have a great edge in, I think, the education that you get at Santa Clara, and I think the work ethic that Santa Clara, I think, provides just a great and stellar reputation. So you've got a great leg up going into the job market.
Brian, thank you for those words. I think it's really reassuring to hear, especially from someone who not only graduated from Santa Clara, but has been in a leadership role at so many organizations and has had the opportunity to interview and hire and kind of see the talent that's out there, and know that Santa Clara University really is top tier at both the education, the students we enroll, the values we instill, et cetera. So, Brian, I have to say, you are one of the busiest men I know. So just keep up the good work. My first question is kind of building a little bit on what I was mentioning about your leadership roles, but I'm going to ask this to Steve first because Steve, I know you have an engagement in a little bit that you have to get to, so I want to make sure we get a question to you first. In your leadership roles as CFO at HDMI, licensing administrator, nonprofit board membership, just leadership throughout your career, I'm sure one of the things you've had to consider is how to find and develop talent for your organizations. And for students that are applying for jobs and internships right now, can you give them some insider perspective as to what qualities might make an intern or an entry-level candidate stand out to you as a senior leader?
That's a good question. I will answer that 2 ways. One, in the sense of, how do you get into the door? Like, what am I looking for when I look at someone's resume? Certainly someone that has done well academically is going to demonstrate a couple of things, right? The strong work ethic, which every leader is looking for, and some way of communicate. Well, first of all, clear communication is paramount across any career, right? So if there's a prospective intern candidate that clearly is able to demonstrate to me that they work hard, they're willing to learn, and they can articulate that very concisely, that says a lot, right? At least as far as I'm concerned. When they get in the door, there's other aspects that I'm looking for. Are they curious? You know, are they not afraid to ask questions, and are not necessarily shy, because no one's expected to know that much coming in. This is your first professional sort of experience. So are you curious? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to raise your hand and maybe volunteer to learn something new? Because that demonstrates that you're looking to really grow. And then if you do take on some projects, are you able to absorb the task, do the task, ask the questions, and articulate your thoughts and ideas in a coherent manner? That really kind of helps you stand out, right? And then honestly, some of the other things that I look at personally are what I would call EQ related, you know, sort of emotional intelligence. Does someone, when they get in the door, do they develop, do they show that they're self-aware? Are they comfortable in their own skin? Do they take the time to understand other people's perspectives rather than just trying to solve things because this is the way that they're used to doing things? You know, those are, I come from a team-oriented environment. I played team sports when I was in college, and I really come from a place of collaboration. You know, the sum of the parts is really important. You know, I look for people that are interested in supporting their colleagues as much as they are making sure that they do a good job. So you know, obviously the front end is, you know, how good are you at clearly articulated to a company that you have skills to bring to the table? And then when you get into the door, how good are you at assimilating and bringing your superpowers to the fore? Even at an internship level, I think that's important. Hopefully that's helpful.
I think that that's really helpful, and a couple of things that stand out to me from your comments is curiosity. When you use the word curious, I think that that is probably the number one thing I tell students. Ask questions, even if you feel a little bit like, oh, I should already know that, or hesitant about how that question might, you know, appear to a senior leader. Curiosity goes a long way towards demonstrating interest and commitment and learning and growth. And yeah, I just really appreciated that comment. Let me open it up. I don't know if anyone on the panel has any kind of follow-up to that or reaction to anything Steve might have mentioned there about what you're looking for when you're getting talent or interviewing talent. Brian, I see the wheels turning. Let me see what you've
so
got to say.
you know, they're just, you know, thinking through this a little bit. I had a chance to go through and scroll through all the comments and chat here real quickly to get a sense of what's out there. So the first thing I'm going to mention is, if you haven't gone to Indeed or you haven't gone to LinkedIn, make sure you're on LinkedIn, make sure you go and do Indeed. There are other tools you can use as well, so just make sure you go do that. You know, I think Steve summed it up pretty well. I think the one thing that I've seen with Santa Clara students, very well spoken, very articulate. There's a sense of inner confidence, so make sure you have that going in. I think some things to put out there right now is, when you look at large companies, we'll just say, you know, kind of the marquee names you're thinking of, whether it's tech or just brand names, the roles that you're going to have are going to be very different than a smaller company. So depending on what you want from an experience, and I'll put into this mix nonprofits, because what you will get with a smaller organization is you'll probably end up doing a lot more stuff and seeing a lot more things that you may otherwise not get a chance to do in a more structured internship with a very narrow slice. So I would say be open to opportunities you may not have considered before, because it's about the opportunity to learn about yourself, to take a look at what the jobs are, to make a meaningful contribution wherever you're at. So I think it's that openness and attitude to learn, and I think Steve said this, which is a mindset of growth, is going to come across in your interview. And what you realize once you're out in the workforce, you never stop learning. So somebody going into it willing to be open-minded and learn will set you apart already from a lot of other folks that feel like they're doing you a favor by going to work for you. You want to feel like this is going to be a great opportunity for me to learn about myself. So as my career evolves and develops, I'm going to be far more knowledgeable about what I like and I want in the long run. So that's why I say I thought Steve did a great job of kind of teeing that up, but just some additional thoughts.
Brian, I like that because it kind of it took that element of curiosity. I almost heard you take it to another level, not just about being curious with the senior leader that you're talking to or the company that you're a part of, but just being curious about all the different companies and opportunities that are out there. You know, you've heard of all the big names, but you know, here in Silicon Valley alone, there's tens of thousands of small to medium-sized businesses that I guarantee you students have never heard of, but still provide really quality careers and experiences. So Jacques, I know you have something to say as well, but the next question is also for you. So I'm going to ask the question, but feel free to also build on what Brian and Steve have said. So I know part of your story in getting to know you over the past couple of years is that you really committed to and hustled to get many different types of career experiences. It was something that you really wanted to get out of your time at Santa Clara, was off-campus, career validating work experience. So was there ever a point you felt discouraged in your search for an internship? You felt like, hey, it's 6 weeks to summer, I haven't found anything yet, what am I going to do?
Right.
And kind of like, what was your mindset in terms of motivating yourself and keeping your head in the game until you did, you know, get what you wanted? So that's my question for you, but feel free to also build on what Brian and Steve said.
I'm originally from Ohio, and my mindset was I'm not going back home to small town Ohio as a failure. That was my motivation. And I had an academic scholarship because I did well in high school, but I had to work at UPS at night to load boxes, and I was a bilingual tutor. I spoke Spanish and English, but that made money for me. I paid rent with that. Those were not resume building jobs in my mind. And so I was applying at the time internship for Pepsi. And I thought because it was in finance and accounting that this was a resume building internship. And I was really excited about the opportunity, but I did not prepare well for this interview. And this was where I wanted to go build on what Brian and Steve had talked about. And that is, when you're in an interview, you need to ask not only questions, but questions that demonstrate that you have knowledge about the industry in which you're interviewing, and that you have some kind of awareness that it's entry level and you have to build up to a particular professional space. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times, because I've had 26 different interns for my business over the last 25 years, a lot of times people come in an interview and they want to buy and sell stocks, or they want to give recommendations on a client's retirement. In college, you're not going to do that day one. And you need to come into an interview with that awareness. You're not going to be interacting with the client, making money move decisions right away. And a lot of people don't have that kind of awareness. And then the other part is, to be able to ask good questions, you need to employ some of the tools you have on campus, like Bronco Exchange, networking, and the informational interview is key. Because my roommate interviewed for Pepsi as well, but he did some informational interviews about what the internship was like for people that had the internship. So he went in not only gung-ho about Pepsi, but he had an awareness of what was going to happen, how they operated, and showed that he was willing to take on their system and their process. Whereas I didn't have any of that awareness. I hadn't done any informational interviews. And so if you use those tools that are available to you, and not just wait maybe a month or two before you're looking for an internship, but have done some networking, you're more likely to get an internship in your field. For me, I ultimately had to go off campus through Inroads. It's a national internship program to find a job in my career.
Thank you, Jacques. And continuing to add kind of like some layers to this idea of curiosity, which is, yeah, you wanted to work at Pepsi, curious about working at Pepsi, got in there and was like, wait a second, I should have done some research here, so I was well prepared. And it's also what we think of, what I advise students when you go into the interview. Classically, we tell them have a couple questions at the end of the interview that you want to ask, but don't ask questions you can already know the answer to by visiting their website or visiting the LinkedIn page of the person you're interviewing with, because then if you do that, it just makes you seem a little uninformed. So there's this balance of being curious, but also doing your due diligence and doing your research, making sure that you're really only asking questions that you couldn't find the answer to some other way except through this in-person conversation or interview that you're having. Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it. Before I ask my next question, any kind of reactions, responses, follow up from the panel on some of that Jacques mentioned? Okay, let me jump over to Athena. Athena's, our newest board member, first time on this panel, so excited to ask you this question. We know that completing an internship is so important to finding employment after graduation. One of the leading indicators of whether a student is going to have a job at graduation or soon after is whether or not they completed an internship. But also, you're in school. It's a time-consuming process to find an internship. Some students, just to put this number out there, apply to 100 internships, and that takes time. So as one of the more recent grads on the panel, I was wondering if you could kind of recollect just a few years ago, how did you balance that that idea of studying for finals and classwork with also, hey, I need to start thinking about what's going to happen afterwards and start looking for internships and jobs. So what were some of your strategies to balance those competing priorities?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I can think of three main strategies that come to my head. The first one is using, whether it's electronic or hard copy, some way to manage your time. And I think time management is such a critical skill to have. So if it's using calendar or a planner or setting reminders on your phone, however you manage your time is up to you, but of course it's really important to do so. And for some people, it's sending out one application a day, or maybe carving out some time during the week or during the weekend to send out multiple applications. But there is that intentionality behind that, and then following through when you set that time to do so. And that applies for work assignments or even beyond graduating when you enter the career, like the professional world. These are all important things to keep in mind. The second thing I would say is if a task is too overwhelming at the start, you can break it down into smaller pieces. Once again, applicable for schoolwork as well as the job application. I think all of us are familiar when you log into a portal and it asks you to upload maybe your transcript, your resume, a cover letter, and then line by line, write down every single work experience you've ever had. So that can be pretty tedious or overwhelming, but if you can break it down into saying, okay, well, if I only have 30 minutes between now and my social engagement later today or before I have to start studying, let me just fill out the basic information, right? My name, my email, and then I'll tackle the rest of that tomorrow. The third thing I would say is if a task will take you maybe 2 to 5 minutes, try to do it in the time that you have at that time. Otherwise, it can lead to procrastination, or you could get stressed out thinking about, oh, I have to do this later. Like Brian had mentioned, if you're not already on LinkedIn or Indeed, just creating an account can take you between 2 to 5 minutes, right? And like Jacques was saying, having informational interviews can be really helpful. So if it takes you 2 to 5 minutes to message that person on LinkedIn or to write them an email, I highly recommend doing that. And I know the question that you asked, Dylan, was more about how do we find that balance in terms of doing schoolwork as well as looking for a job or an internship. But I also really want to encourage the students to think about balancing health and wellness as well. As Neil mentioned, being at Santa Clara was such a special experience. And of course, it speaks to a lot of us being on the board. And it's so special when I think about my time at Santa Clara. So I want to encourage you to immerse yourself in that while also keeping an eye out for future you who will thank you later when you're not procrastinating or trying to while stressed out trying to complete an application before the deadline. These are moments that can be extremely stressful and it can be very challenging to find that balance, but I know that it's something that each and every one of you can do.
Athena, thank you so much for that. That was really encouraging. And I think that's a good reminder that we're not just balancing school and internship and work, but also our joy and, precious memories that we're creating and our mental health and our wellness. Such an important part of the journey. Just an anecdote that I'll share is I graduated from San Francisco State. Although I'm currently enrolled in the doctoral program here at Santa Clara, so I'll soon be an alum as well, along with all of you. But when I was at SF State, I remember feeling like I graduated a semester early, and I was like, I'm gonna crank this out and get done early. And then that last quarter, like all my friends were, doing all of kind of like the final semester activities and fun. And it's not necessarily that I regret that because there were benefits to graduating early, but it's just about what you made me think of is just all in due time, all in good time, and enjoy the time that you have and try not to be too overly anxious about what you don't have and focus on the present, the people around you, the support that is available to you. This panel is a perfect example of people, here to support and be present. So anyways, Athena, I'm going on a little bit of a rant, but thank you so much for kind of bringing that to mind for us. I think that's really important. Did anyone want to follow up on anything Athena said, or any kind of reactions to that?
Yeah, the health and wellness piece was really an important one. I think one of the other things that I wish someone had told me when I was these folks' age is it's important to be authentic to who you are. Show up as your authentic you, because in a work environment, you're going to be working with these folks 40 plus hours a week. You want to spend that much time with someone, they have to be comfortable with you. You have to be comfortable with them. So it's important to show up in your own DNA. And candidly, I assume that most of the folks on the Regents that are on this panel have been in work situations that just weren't a good DNA fit. And from Athena's point, knowing when to maybe look for a different situation sooner versus later will save a lot of stress and mental anguish downstream. So I appreciate Athena for pointing out the mental health aspect of things.
100%. Thank you, Steve. Brian, let me ask you a question. A point blank question. And here goes. Does networking actually work? And here in the Career Center, I see a resounding head nod, but we often we tell students about the hidden job market, and 80% of jobs are found through who you know, not just applying online. But then of course students that's anxious because it's like, well, who do I know? I don't know, I don't know anyone in these big companies. So then, we're promoting, well, hey, get on LinkedIn and message people and get on Bronco Exchange, which is Santa Clara's, closed student alumni network. But honestly, it can sometimes feel, and I'll just say it, let's just be honest, it can feel a little hit or miss. You're sending these messages out. How do I know how to get someone to reply to me? How do I know how to make this kind of, how to convert this from a LinkedIn conversation to a job referral or something that actually is meaningful? So anyways, what advice do you have for students when it comes to trying to network with professionals like yourself and the other panelists here? What works, what doesn't work? What are your suggestions?
Great question. And networking does work, but it probably has a much broader definition than what we may originally assume. So I'll just start with LinkedIn. if you take a look and do a search on LinkedIn for companies that you're considering, and you look for people who may work there, Santa Clara affiliation, it doesn't hurt to reach out. In fact, for all of us on the panel, feel free to go to LinkedIn and connect with us. Because then you can look at our connections, see if there's somebody at a company that we may know. Because all we're talking about is an introduction. In fact, this week alone, last week and this week, 2 people I know, friends of mine, their kids both got internships because I made introductions for them. Again, they earned the internship, but they didn't know about the opening. And they said, do you know of anything? I said, sure, I got this company that wants 2 people and they both are going to work there. So you just never know. So I'd say, look at LinkedIn, connect with us, connect with others. And again, look at their relationships, and don't be hesitant to ask. All of us on this panel have had somebody who extended a introduction or gave us a helping hand along the way. Nobody gets there without the help of others. And all of us are on this call tonight because we care about you and we care about Santa Clara, and we will do what we can to make a connection and an introduction. Take advantage of it.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And thanks for reinforcing, what we say. Networking does work, but certainly starting with the Santa Clara connections is important. And I love that tip. It's such a valuable tip of when you make a connection with someone, look at their connections.
Yeah.
And I'll just put this out to the students here. You should be, if you're not already, connected with all of your faculty members. Everyone that you have taken a class with, connect with them. And then look through their network and go to their office hours and be like, hello, I see that you're connected with these 3 people. Would you be willing to make an introduction? And assuming, of course, you did well in their class and you made a good impression, I think you'll find the faculty to be very receptive to that and it happens less often than you think, so you'll stand out if you do it. So thank you, Brian, for that. And
Sure.
Kind of building on this networking question, Neil, maybe talk about like geographic networking and like building a new network, maybe from scratch. So I know that you recently moved to Los Angeles. You were living right here by Santa Clara University for many years. You moved to Los Angeles, and a lot of the students on the call, I'm sure, are casting a wide net for where they're want to do internships or a job, maybe New York City, LA, Bay Area, Seattle, etc. What's been your strategy for building your network in a new city? And what do you think the advantages are or disadvantages are of relocating for work?
Thanks, Dylan. I think it's a great question, especially kind of given that networking and job searches and moving to the next thing never really stops. You kind of think that once you get out of Santa Clara, you either go to grad school or you get a job, and then that's kind of the rest of your life. I think it doesn't really work out that way for most people, but it's exciting. Like, life takes you different places. For me, I went to Duke for law school and missed Santa Clara so much that I wanted my first job out of law school to be in Palo Alto. So that's where I worked for 3 years. My fiance was living in LA. We weren't engaged then, but we are now. And thank you. And I was able to make the move because my law firm also had an office down in LA. So they made it easy for me to move. But whether you're moving kind of internally at the same company or looking for a new job, I found that kind of the skills and approach that I had to take were very similar. I had to build new connections down here. I had to build a new social network. I had to kind of figure out, what is my life in LA? What should that look like? And how can I build that for myself? I employed a few strategies there. I leaned on my Santa Clara network. I had friends who lived down here, so got kind of plugged in with various things down here and social activities. And then in terms of my job, I leaned heavily on my existing mentors at Kirkland and Ellis to help me make the transfer, and to get me connected with, partners and associates down here who would be supportive to my career. I think that involves a lot of kind of deliberate effort, but to the points people have been raising on this call, curiosity too. willingness to try, in my case, new types of deals and kind of new types of industries that I hadn't been familiar with in the Bay Area. So I think showing willingness and curiosity to try new things goes a long way with people, and can really help facilitate the process. And I know it's come out kind of just at a higher level with other people, but I really, really want to underscore for the people going through the internship or job market process right now, lean heavily on your mentors and lean heavily on your Santa Clara connections. I found that when I was coming out of law school, reaching out to people from Santa Clara got the highest response rates. I would say 75% of people I reached out to from Santa Clara gave me some type of response, and at least 25 to 30% maybe I had phone calls with and conversations that actually led to more opportunities. So lean on your Santa Clara connections. To Brian's point, networking does work, but you have to start with your mentors, start with your existing connections, and build from there. And be very deliberate in asking people, can you connect me with this person? Or do you know somebody who can help me in this area? Don't be afraid to ask that question. People want to help, and take them up on it.
Dylan, can I add to that?
Please.
I wanted to just make a testament that networking does work, and at the core of the word network is work, and so it's really hard. And you know, I recently met a Bronco that's graduating this year, and he did 100 informational interviews because he wanted to work on the East Coast in his field. Okay, and to me, that's so much more impressive than the student that's in an interview saying, I applied to 50 companies and internships. If you spent your time networking, family, friends, professors, connecting with the dean of your school, talking to a keynote speaker that visits campus and asks for an opportunity to engage, to your church or organization that you're in, your fraternity, your student union organization, asking others how they got an internship, than just applying. That's so much more powerful. And the reality is most of us don't know what we're going to be doing 7 years from now. And so you got to make a step in the right direction. I met another intern that wanted to be in the same industry on the East Coast in London, but didn't do as many informational interviews, did a lot of applying, ultimately got a business in another industry. But to me, it was because he didn't do the networking. He didn't meet people and understand the opportunity he wanted to learn from his career in studies in school. And the student at Santa Clara that did all those informational interviews and spoke with professors and people in the industry is now doing what he wants to do.
Really well said, and some great points there. Networking is work. We can't forget that. You really have to put in the time and energy to craft good messages, research people that are going to be relevant to what you're looking for. And one of the things that stood out to me there is when you said family and friends, because when I talk to students, it's almost a blind spot, because I'll be like, have you told your parents that you're looking for an internship? Or have you told your older brother? Or have you told your uncle or aunt, or your cousins? No, I didn't think to tell them. That's the first place to start. Put your resume in the hands of your relatives first, because each of those people are connected to 2 or 3 people who are connected to 2 to 3 people. So that I think is such a good point. Like, tell your friends and family, even before you start messaging alumni or professors, et cetera. Start close to home, and leverage the people that know you best. And Neil, I think one of the things you said about asking for a very specific call to action. Can you do this for me? Or even when you're requesting the meeting, do you have 20 minutes? Not do you have the time? But just being very specific. That way, someone who's busy is like, okay, this is what the person needs. This is how much time I'm going to allot. or we can negotiate down. If you ask for an hour, they're like, okay, not an hour, but I can give you, 20 minutes on Zoom. So that's such a good point. Call to action, and really that network is work. You have to put in that time. And thinking about the balance between, you're going to spend an hour submitting applications online, or you're going to submit an hour applying. So you might have noticed Steve left. Steve's former student athlete here at Santa Clara, is at PayPal Park, getting some kudos and recognition for his soccer days over there at PayPal Park right now. So he's off to that, but feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn, Steve Robertson. So let me ask one final question to the panelists, and then I want to open it up to the students on the call, students and alumni, because I know there's a few alums on the call. And I'll just reinforce, you have heard from almost everyone here, curiosity matters. So ask a question, don't be afraid, put it in the chat first, and then we'll call on folks. You can turn your camera off or on, ask your question. And yeah, we'll engage for the last 20-30 minutes that we have here. So here's my question. I'm going to start with Brian, then Athena, then Neil, then Jacques. What is one final piece of advice you would give students who have just these final 6 weeks to go before summer break to find a job or an internship? What's some of the most effective actions they can take right now? Brian?
Wow. So after we're done, go get your LinkedIn profile set up if you haven't done it. Connect with all of us, look at our connections, start doing your list. And I think Athena had talked about this. Get your plan out so you start making those outreach and sending your messages to start making connections. And as Dylan had talked about, check with family and friends. A great place to begin. Have your resume CV updated so you can email it. Not everybody's going to go to LinkedIn and look at it. So be sure to have that. And, talk about some of the unique things you've done that set you apart and why you would be great for the role. So that means tailoring it a little bit depending on who you're sending your message to.
Great advice, Brian. Thank you very much. Athena?
Yeah, I also want to agree with what Brian mentioned. Definitely leveraging your network, your friends and family through the Bronco system. And I also want to emphasize that you're not alone in this process, and you will never be. So another thing I would also add is it can be a very vulnerable process to be reaching out to people, to be applying for jobs. And so just try to do your best and be kind to yourself, because, like Dylan mentioned, it can be really anxiety inducing to know that there's only 6 weeks left, but keep persevering, keep sending out those applications, those emails. Not everyone will respond, but those who do will be able to see the value that you bring to the table and know that whatever you end up doing is still important and impactful.
Thank you, Athena. Appreciate that. Neil?
Yeah, echo all of that. And I think my advice very specifically with 6 weeks to go is that, like, hour for hour, your time is probably best spent at this point connecting with people directly. I do think that applications can help somewhat earlier in the process and later in the process too. But I think that your time is best spent like finding the connections, making the right connections, and then putting forth specific calls to action, and doing so with your mentors, your Santa Clara connections, faculty, anybody who can help you in that regard. You'll be very surprised by how much people who maybe don't even have a direct connection with you will want to help if you give them a specific call to action on how to help.
Great advice. And just to reinforce your point, some of you might have noticed in the chat, Steve said, he and I are working right now on getting him an intern for the summer. And so it's not too late, folks. If you go on Handshake right now, there's literally thousands of internships. You go on Indeed, there's literally thousands of internships. But to Neil's point, it's not just about mass applying. It's about making the right connections and trying to cut through the noise a little bit. So if you need some help with that, Career Center is right here. Schedule an appointment. Jacques, final word before we open it up to the students for Q&A. What's some advice you'd give? Oh, you're muted.
I see Steve Robertson suggested that his son has a job currently that was from an internship because he put out a birthday wish on his social media saying my birthday wish or my graduation wish and put that out there. And I love that. I love that story. So that's one hint. I have a personal financial planning business. I would love to have an intern this summer. So if you're a finance major, please hit me up on LinkedIn and connect with me and suggest that we have a informational interview. I'll post my job opportunity in this month in May. And thirdly, I want to speak to those people that have difficulty with networking and self-promotion. Consider the buddy system. Get a friend that you're comfortable with and ask each other the interview questions that you know that you're going to get hit up with. Practice your answers so that when you're in the moment, you can breathe, you can feel comfortable, and you can just be you in the moment. But that comes from practice, particularly if you're not comfortable with public speaking. So practice with the buddy.
Good idea.
Yeah, great advice, and exciting to know. I mean, that's 2 regents right there that are considering hiring for internships, and that's just a small slice of the very large Santa Clara alumni network. All right, well, hey, let's give all of our panelists a virtual round of applause. Thank you very much for that wonderful discussion, and I'd like to just open it up to the students and alumni in the room. Raise your hand virtually, and I'll call on you. What questions do you have for Brian, Athena, Neil, Jacques, or even myself representing the Career Center? Let's open it up. Okay, Rhett, go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself, name, major, class year, and what your question is.
Hi, my name's Rhett. I'm a sophomore and I'm a finance major. And my question, I was just gonna throw it out there, is, I've been applying to some positions, and what I've come to realize is, I could spend 3 or 4 days trying to perfect one cover letter, one resume. Or maybe, I could spend a couple of days and maybe crank out 10 applications. And I was just kind of wondering like how people balance it between like quality and quantity and how I might look at that.
Well, I don't know who wants to go first, but Athena, I see you shaking your head vigorously. So you want to take a stab at that?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Rhett. Nice to meet you. Thank you for your question. I totally agree. It makes a lot of sense in terms of trying to strike that balance between pushing out a ton of applications or spending a lot of time on several. And so this kind of ties into what I mentioned about time management. And if there's a certain deadline that is approaching for a job that you really want or care about, breaking it down into smaller tasks, like for a cover letter, you could draft that cover letter and then revise it the next day and then spend another day revising it. I typically, once I create something, I don't actually submit it right away. I prefer to have a good night's sleep and then take a look at it. And sometimes I might catch some small errors and sometimes I don't, but that's kind of one of the ways that I do quality control on my own applications. And then one aspect of LinkedIn that I particularly enjoy is that you can filter certain jobs or internships by easy apply. And that one is going strictly by resume. So if you're pressed for time or you really just want to send out a few, you can use that easy apply function and then set aside a different list for those applications that might require a little bit more time. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, some great advice there. And this might be, I don't know, heretical to say, but don't overthink your cover letter. It's not, it's a writing sample. It's a way to express a little bit more detail about why you might want to work on work at that company specifically, or why if you have a connection with that company, you want to put that in the cover letter. But generally speaking, your cover letters could look pretty similar cover letter to cover letter to cover letter, as long as you're making a few little tweaks. So I'm going to put into the chat our guide to resumes and cover letters. You can see a couple of the templates and drafts that we have here. If anyone strongly disagrees with me on the panel, let me know. But yeah, don't let the cover letter weigh you down. That's something that, you know, more or less just no spelling errors, customized a little bit, and then fire it off. Any thoughts on that? Have I, anyone want to contradict me, Brian?
No, not a contradiction, just adding to that. If there's an opportunity, if you recognize something in the individual you're sending it to, their LinkedIn profile or a connection, put that in your cover letter. I noticed this, I went there, you know, I know somebody who works, something like that, that's going to make that connection, you know, in the, you know, first paragraph. So they'll see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think whatever you do to make your cover letter stand out, it should just be one sentence and it should be at the front. Because frankly, a lot of people aren't reading the whole cover letter.
Yeah. Even when they require it, they're likely, not reading it too much. It's kind of almost a way of figuring out, can you play the game? Do you know how to write it? Do you even know how to write a cover letter? Do you have a good writing sample, etc.? But Rhett, hey, thanks for that question. Really appreciate it. Robert, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself, introduce yourself, name, major, class here, and your question.
Cool. Thank you very much. And thank you all for this. I'm actually faculty. I teach in philosophy and in management occasionally. And I was curious to see how this came off. When I'm working with students and advisees, I often say that, so I race cars when I'm not doing scholarship. And I often say, this is like a part of the track where you're not going to gain time, but you can lose time. And I wondered if that sort of relates in the sense that it's an opportunity to avoid certain kinds of mistakes and to show that you're showing up in a way, but probably not to like clinch a deal or something like that. And the other question, if I could, is thinking about quality versus quantity. I often advise, at least for the resume anyway, multiple quick revisions. So it goes through multiple rounds. Something's been looked at several times rather than like a huge amount of time on trying to get some non-existent perfect cover letter or resume or something like that. So I was wondering if the panel could react to that so that I can pass that on to other folks.
Well, kind of paraphrasing what I think you said, you know, the software development concept of fast iteration, you know, get something that is good. Doesn't have to be outstanding. It's not going to win, you know, some sort of Pulitzer Prize, and get it out and keep refining it as you hear from people or you look at it again. You may want to tweak it. I will say just that one thing that that Neil had mentioned as well is just something in the beginning paragraph, beginning opening that makes a connection somehow with who you're sending it to is one thing I try to keep in there. But that great point, fast iteration.
What I would say that speaks indirectly and directly to this question is, I think it's good to have kind of like a base resume, but I think the most common mistake that I've seen with internship applications is just not following the directions for the application process. So that's kind of like throws you out of the whole thing if there's add a cover letter or don't add a cover letter, or you know, share your available times to meet and you don't follow the directions. That's probably a bigger problem than did you write a really good cover letter. So I would focus on following the directions. And I would say if you're contemplating whether or not you have the time to customize it, then that's telling you maybe this isn't worth the opportunity. You know, maybe you need to have a list of what's your criteria. You know, you want certain types of work experience. To the finance person, are you trying to find out about buy side, sell side? You want to get into money management, and this affords an opportunity to that. Can you work full year round or only during the summer? And what is your criteria for a good internship, rather than the number of applications? Because it's not kind of like, if I apply to 10, I'm going to get 4 offers. You could apply to 10 and get 0, right? So I don't know. I hope that helps.
Hey, Jacques, just adding to that, use spell check.
Yeah, there you go.
Use spell check. Boy, oh boy, that is a buzzkill when you get a cover letter with typos. Not good.
Yeah. And a lot of the programs like Indeed and others use keyword search. So maybe have someone proof check it that's in the industry from your informational interviews. Say, you know, how's this look? Does this look right for resume in this industry? What do you think? And they'll help you make sure those keywords are in there.
Thank you for that. And just a note on keywords, because sometimes students will ask me, how do I know what the keywords are? So it's like a black box or a mystery. And there's one simple trick, folks. Read the job description, get a highlighter, highlight the keywords, you know, and, hey, investment, analytics, communication, just highlight the keywords, everything but, you know, and or but or, and then look at your resume and go, how many of those words that I just highlighted are in my resume, and how many of them can I get into my resume? And that's your keyword search, because what they put in the job description is what the applicant tracking system is going to be comparing the resume against. So that's just a quick little trick. Just read the job description carefully. The keywords are all in there. William, go ahead and unmute yourself, introduce yourself, name, major and class year, and then go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hello. First, thank you all so much. It's been very helpful and informational. My name is Will. I'm a junior finance major. And obviously, as we've been talking about, there's 6 weeks left, and I want to go all out getting an internship. But other internships, especially competitive ones in finance, are recruiting for summer 2025 now. And I was wondering how to balance that, whether I should be going to those things, or if I should just focus on this summer to get that down and show companies for next year.
That's a really good question. And Will, it's getting crazier and crazier every year that I'm in this business, how early companies start. And so I just want to give you a kudos that you're even aware of it, you know, because this is 16 months before summer 2025, and at least it's on your radar. And the fact that it is shows that you're paying attention, which already is giving you a leg up, because there's going to be a lot of other students that are going to wake up in mid-September, early October and realize, wait a second, all those applications just closed for next summer. So kudos to you for being on top of it, paying attention. Any advice for Will in terms of, you know, should he be focusing on this summer, or should he be focusing on all those applications for next summer that are going to be starting to open up?
Hey, Will, say hi to your dad for me.
I will. I will.
I will follow up on that startup. I'll get a message out and make that intro for you for that startup on the peninsula. You know what? You can do both, right? You can do this summer, you can do next summer. Start focusing in maybe some companies that you're really interested in, and that way keep an eye on them for next summer. But no reason not to get your name out there now. Doesn't hurt.
Great. Thank you.
I don't want to speak out of my depths here because I don't know how the finance industry is recruiting for the next year at this point, but I would connect with somebody in the industry, maybe somebody who has some familiarity with the hiring process, and ask them, what are they looking at for the summer before? Are they kind of okay with whatever you want to do? Or are they looking for you to be doing something specific and then target doing that? If it's kind of broader, then you can shorten your search a little bit, maybe do research with a professor or something that gives you more flexibility to be able to go out and make connections during the summer as well. So I would figure out what is necessary to set yourself up, and then kind of tailor your search around that.
Awesome. Thank you.
To Will's question, one, I don't have a specific answer about the 60 months versus this summer, because I'm not familiar with that issue. But there's 2 ways I would approach it if I were like where you're at. One is I would try to understand from the recruitment department. I would even just call up the HR person that hires for that company and ask them a question. Say, I'm interested in working at your company. How many people have you hired that don't have an internship from the summer? For example, I worked at Clorox out of Santa Clara. They specifically recruited from Santa Clara, but if it were Xerox where I worked afterwards, they did not recruit at all at Santa Clara. So you would have had, if you wanted to work at Xerox, you would have had to have had a summer internship if you would have had out of college experience. Now, that would have been important to me because I know that I wanted to be in finance out of school, right? So I would have figured that out, and I want to work to one of these 3 or 4 companies that where they're in California where I want to be. But if it would have been my friend Usman, who is now 50 years old, has changed 8 careers, brilliant guy, at that age, he would have been more important to work this summer to validate whether or not he wanted to do accounting or finance, regardless if, forget about next summer, it was like, I'm not even sure if I want to do this. My parents want me to be in accounting and finance, but I don't know if I want to be in this. I'm not sure. So if you're sure like I was, go for the gold. If you're not sure, get work experience that'll validate you want to be in the career, is what I would say.
Thank you.
Good question. And hey, Will, you heard it here. Steve, just a sneak preview, Steve Robertson, the intern that he's looking for is a finance intern. And Jacques looking for a finance intern. So make sure you connect with both of those folks on LinkedIn. It sounds like Brian's got a connection waiting in the wings as well. So hey, you're in a good position, sir. I also put something in the chat. I want to share this with everyone. It's called The Forage. It's a really unique website where they provide work simulations anywhere from 2 to 6 hours, company approved, company built. So Citibank, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, etc., along with people in tech. So Uber's in there, athletic wear, Lululemon. And if you want to get put into a company's kind of applicant pool and have a little kind of asterisk next to your application, in a good way, complete one of these work simulations, because it will actually trigger an alert when you do apply, because you'll already be in their database that you actually completed a work simulation. You're going to see pretty much, 70-80% of the Fortune 500 have a work simulation there, as well as a lot of other companies. So it's a cool thing to do if you don't have if you don't land an internship for the summer, you can still stack up a few of these work simulations, which are company validated and company approved. Let me ask, are there any other questions from the audience for our Regents today?
I have another question if that's all right.
Sure, Rhett, go for it.
This might be targeted a little bit more towards you, Dylan. Just kind of like what trends you've kind of seen, as a whole, and kind of with these kind of bigger, huge companies. And I guess I've heard a little bit, and I would assume that like your application kind of goes to like probably gets like filtered by some sort of algorithm or something like that. And I was just kind of wondering, like, I mean, obviously you can optimize for it, but I was just kind of wondering, like, I don't know if you could kind of explain how that happens and like what kind of weeds people out and what kind of like brings people to the top.
Oh, that's a good question. So here's a myth I'll just debunk, which is that applicant tracking systems auto sort and filter applications, and if you don't meet the algorithms, requirements, you don't get seen. I have, one of our alumni, Santa Clara alumni, is head of people at Google. One of our trustees is at NVIDIA. And these are top companies that are getting thousands and thousands of applications. And I've spoken to them. They review every application they get, for at least for their internships and entry-level roles. They take it very seriously, and they put a lot of manpower into it. So the very first thing I'll say is, yes, you want your keywords. Yes, you want to make sure that your resume is being read properly by the ATS. But for a lot of these companies, you're not getting weeded out almost automatically, unless you don't meet some of the very minimum requirements, like the proper class year or graduation, or if they have a GPA requirement, etc. But that's one thing I just kind of want to debunk a little bit. If you meet the minimum requirements, you're going to get a fair shot. So then it's about a lot of what we've talked about here, which is no spelling errors, making sure that your resume contains the keywords, that a human being is going to be able to say, hey, this person read our job description and tailored it appropriately. The cover letter, if you know someone, if there's a personal connection, if you've made a compelling case, like Neil said in paragraph 1 about, hey, this is why I'm motivated, or this is who I know. Those are the types of things that are going to help you stand out, as well as, of course, having, relevant experience. I did say the applicant tracking system, for the most part, is not auto filtering you out, but human beings only spend 20 seconds to a minute reading your resume. So in some sense, they've developed an auto filter even as a human being, and they're looking for very specific things. So what I would suggest is at the very, top to bottom, most important things that you're on your resume at the top to least important in terms of eye-catching, credibility building statements and experiences. So if you have relevant internship experience, or if you do one of these work simulations that I just linked to that's relevant to what you're applying for, make sure that it's right there at the top. Relevant classes that you've taken, your education section, right there at the top. So those are a couple of my suggestions. But what I really encourage you to do, if you haven't already, maybe you have, come in and talk to one of our career coaches. Make sure that you get, your resume reviewed, your LinkedIn reviewed, and that everything looks top notch. Any other kind of add-ons to that from the panelists?
One thing, I just did a quick, using ChatGPT, you can use whichever one you want, but I just typed in, list 10 companies in San Francisco Bay Area that have internship openings in finance. And I have 10 companies here. I just went to the first one to take a look at their internship page, application page. So again, kind of going back to what Athena had talked about, you break it into small buckets. This may not be the be all end all, but again, that's another search along with the filters in Indeed, the filters in LinkedIn, going to the Career Center. Just one more tool to be able to go look at these and see if they're relevant for what you're considering. And as you all know, you can keep refining the search. You could use Santa Clara Valley, Santa Clara County. You don't know. It's pretty interesting to see this pop up. And anyway, there you go.
Ryan, wow, ahead of the times. Incorporating AI, ChatGPT. It's great to see. Red, hopefully that answered your question, gave you some things to think about.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, listen, I think that brings our panel to a close. Again, just a virtual round of applause for our panelists today. And honestly, for the entire Board of Regents, for all of the time you invest in seen and unseen ways to support our students. We really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I know our students do. And some of the grants that you funded, the students are going to see the benefits of that in the coming year, which is going to be really exciting. So to all the students, thank you for taking this time to invest in yourself, doing a little bit of networking. Kirsten put all of the LinkedIn URLs into the chat. So make sure you connect with everyone here, and don't just connect, send a note, introduce yourself, provide some context. What was something that they said in the panel that stood out to you? All of that good stuff helps make a strong impression. So thank you all very much. And to the panelists, if you wouldn't mind just staying on for a couple of minutes, that would be great. To all the students and alumni, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Good luck.